Hi, let's learn Legendary, a Marvel deck building game, a 1 to 5 player game by Devin Low, published by Upper Deck. The goal of the game is to defeat the Mastermind by the amount of tactic cards he has, in this case, 4. Now let's learn how to set up. Begin by placing the game board on the table. Before we need to make any decisions, let's place the shield officers, wounds, and bystanders on the corresponding spots on the game board. Next, let's choose a Mastermind. So we will take the Mastermind and its 4 tactics and place that with the tactics in random order in the Mastermind space. Next, we will choose a scheme and place that in the designated area. We need to build a villain deck, so let's do that right now. Start by taking the 5 Master Strikes. Then read the scheme card to see how many twists to put in. Be sure to read the twist cards to know for sure how many twists to add, as well as any additional setup information you may need to know. Then add in the amount of scheme twists required by the scheme, in addition to any other setup information it may require. Then we will choose the villain, henchmen, and bystanders according to the number of players. Let's set up a 2-player game. For a 2-player game, we will add in 2 bystanders. But before we choose our villains and henchmen, let's take a look at our Mastermind card. We will see that they always lead a certain group, so be sure you are choosing that group while you are choosing your villains and henchmen. We have seen that the Red Skull always leads Hydra, and let's take the Skrulls. For a 2-player game, we will choose 1 henchman group. You will know it is a henchman because it will have the word henchman villain on it. Now that we have the individual parts of the deck, we will now shuffle them together. Then place that in the spot designated for the villain deck. For a handy quick start guide, instead of consulting the instruction manual, there's a handy chart on the upper left-hand side of the game board. Now let's set up the hero deck. For our 2-player game, we will choose 5 heroes, and there are no restrictions as to which heroes you may or may not choose. Any synergies there may be between heroes, I'll leave to you to discover. When you have decided which heroes to use, you'll take those stacks and shuffle them together. Then put that deck in the spot reserved for the hero deck. Then take the top 5 cards and place that in the HQ. You will see that the city has 5 spaces, so a hero goes in the HQ in the corresponding spot below that. Finally, deal each player 8 Shield Agent cards and 4 Shield Trooper cards. Each player will take their own deck, shuffle the cards, and deal themselves 6 from their own deck. And that is the setup. So now let's start at the beginning of a player's turn. At the start of each player's turn, flip over the top card of the villain deck. And now let's go over what each card type does. For a Master Strike, look at the Mastermind and resolve the Master Strike effect. For a Scheme Twist, look over at the scheme and resolve at what Scheme Twist number you are at. If the card drawn is a bystander, then place the card under the villain closest to the villain deck. And if there are no villains in the city, place it under the Mastermind. Otherwise, and more commonly, the cards will be villains or henchmen. Moving forwards, they will work the same way. If the card is a villain or henchman, read the card to see if it has an ambush effect. If it does, that means you must do this effect right now. After resolving any ambush effects, place it in the space closest to the villain deck. If you draw a villain, and there's already one in the city space, move it over to make room for that one. If there are no villains in the closest space, there is no need to move any villains over and simply fill the gap. And continue to do so until all the space has been filled and you must move a villain over. If, at a later point in the game, you reveal the top card, and it is a card that will be placed in the city, but that city is full, all the cards still move forward 1 space. And the card you drew gets placed closest to the villain deck. And there's 1 card that got pushed out of the city. This is an escaped villain, and it goes in the escaped villain spot. The consequence of that is one of the heroes in the HQ with a cost of 6 or less must be KO'd. And when you KO a card, that removes the card permanently from the game and refill the hero space. If the next card you reveal after that is also a henchman or villain and the city is still full, then everything still moves over one space. That card goes to the space closest to the villain deck. And because this card also has a bystander, one of the cards from HQ gets removed as consequence of a villain escaping, and as consequence of any number of bystanders being carried away, each player must discard one card from their 6-card hand. No matter how many bystanders escaped, only one card must be discarded. Sometimes when a villain becomes an escaped villain, they have an escape effect to resolve. Sometimes the escape effect is unique. Sometimes it is the same as the fight or ambush effects. Be sure to resolve the escape effect in addition to KOing a hero from the HQ and discarding a card from your hand if they carried off a bystander. So it's our turn. The top card of the villain deck has been flipped and resolved, so now let's see what we can do. Let's say for our very first turn, this is the hand we were dealt. We have 3 attack points and 3 recruit points. Attack points are known by the 3 red scratches at the bottom left of the card. And of course, recruit points are known by the star value on the left side of the card. On your turn, you're able to recruit and attack as many times as you have recruit and attack points for. In our example, we have 3 attack points to spend. To spend attack points, we look to the city and the mastermind. The mastermind we have chosen requires 7 attack points to defeat, so let's look back to the city. We can see we have 2 Doombots out. And because we have 3 attack points, we are able to remove one of them from the city. And be sure that in addition to spending attack points, you also resolve the fight effect. If we had 6 attack points, we would be able to attack both Doombots. And say we had 13 hit points, we would be able to hit Red Skull and both Doombots in the same turn. And if you had 7 attack points, you could hit Red Skull once. And in this case, he holds a bystander, which would go into your victory pile. You would then also take one of the tactics, read what it says, and resolve it. In this case, there is a fight effect. And you are able to hit the mastermind for as many tactics as he has. So in this case, if you had 28 attack points, you could hit him 4 times to win the game. Before we move on, you should note that masterminds are not the same as regular villains. That is to say, that cards that say they affect all villains do not affect the mastermind. For example, we can see on this Midtown bank robbery scheme that there's a special rule that says each villain gets +1 attack for each bystander it has. So in this case, each regular villain gets 1 extra attack point, whereas the mastermind does not. And now, spending our recruit points. When recruiting, we look to the shield officers and HQ spaces. In our example, we have 3 recruit points. And we see at the bottom right how many points it requires to recruit this card. So if we chose this card, we would use up all 3 of our recruit points. When recruiting a shield officer, take one from the shield officer pile and add it to your discard pile. We can see that the next time it is dealt to us, we will have 2 recruit points instead of only 1. When recruiting any other hero, take it from the HQ and add it to your discard pile. Then take the top card of the hero deck and add it to the HQ. If you had the recruit points to do so, it is possible to recruit more than 1 card. If you do have the points to recruit multiples, remove 1 from the HQ, fill in that space with the top card from the hero deck, then choose another card, and so forth. And place all cards you've recruited into your discard pile. Whether a player was able to spend their attack and recruit points or not, when a player has completed their turn, they will take all the cards that they had drawn for that turn and put them all into the discard pile. Then deal yourself 6 more cards. Then it's the next player's turn, And when it comes back to you, take your 6 cards and repeat this process. When it is time for you to deal more cards out for yourself and you don't have a draw pile, take your discard pile and shuffle that together. Then deal yourself up to 6 cards. So a player's play area will consist of their personal draw deck, a personal play space, which is condensed here for illustrative purposes, their personal discard pile, and their personal victory pile. All henchmen, villains, mastermind tactics, and bystanders will all go into its own victory pile. Just be sure you keep your victory pile separate from your discard pile. Now let's look at some other features of some other cards. To begin, let's compare our shield officer to a superhero. If we look at the top left corner of the card, we can see which heroic team they belong to. Maria Hill with shield and Gambit with the X-Men. And we can see that the superheroes also have a secondary hero class. And sometimes heroic teams and hero classes can grant special powers if you play your cards right. Let's start off with a basic example. We can see here that this card says to draw 2 cards, then put a card from your hand on top of your deck. There are no restrictions to this card, you simply follow the instructions. We can see here that sometimes certain superpowers only activate when certain conditions are met, whether it be a heroic team condition or a heroic class condition. Let's go into how to meet these conditions. Let's say we play this Hawkeye card. If this is the first card we play, he would only get 2 attack points, because the way these cards work is that you would need to put an Avengers card before it to activate the superpower. So let's play this Hawkeye card first. We draw a card unrestricted, then we play the Hawkeye card. Because this Avengers card was played first, it activates this Avengers superpower. And because of that, that allows us to add 1 more attack point to our total. Other cards make reference to cards you have, rather than cards that were played before it. This Captain America card, for example, says you get +1 recruit for each color of hero you have. So for example, let's say I had already laid down this Strength hero. And the next card I play is this Captain America Instinct hero. I still have 4 cards left in my hand, most of them different colors. So this Captain America would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 recruit points for playing this card. So for our different colors, we can see here that we have the green Strength heroes, the yellow Instinct heroes, the black Tech heroes, the red Covert heroes, the blue Ranged heroes, and gray Shield heroes. And we might as well use this time now to familiarize ourselves with the heroic teams. Included in the base set are Shield, Avengers, Spider-Friends, X-Men, and Deadpool. Some cards will say to gain a wound. What that means is draw a wound card from the wound pile and add it to your discard pile. Sometimes a card will instruct you to reveal a hero type. What that means for other players is to simply prove to other players that they have that card, then place it back in their hand. No need to discard. And as for the player who already has cards down, they may reveal that they have already played one of those cards. And to continue this as our example, it is possible for a player to choose not to reveal a hero and instead take the wound. And a wound card serves no purpose beyond taking up a space that could have been used for a more useful card. Some cards will instruct you to rescue a bystander. To rescue a bystander, take one of the bystander cards from the bystander pile and add it to your victory pile. If at some point during gameplay you run out of Shield Officer, Wound, or Bystander cards, simply continue playing. If at some point in the future you are instructed to take one of these cards, simply continue playing without choosing one of these cards. Remember, cards in the KO section are not available for selection. And as we saw earlier, some cards say, draw a card. What that means is to take the top card of your personal deck and place it in your hand. And it is this way that we are able to get more than the 6 cards that we initially draw. We're in the end game now. If during gameplay the villain or hero deck runs out, finish their round, and if the mastermind is not defeated, it is considered a draw. If the final condition of the scheme happens, then evil wins. If the mastermind gets hit a final time and there are no more tactics, the heroes win. Optionally, there is a final showdown mode. What this is one more chance to gain the mastermind card. To play this mode, players will deal themselves out 6 cards as they had during gameplay. They will play these cards as though they were playing them to recruit or attack normally. Instead, however, they will add up their victory and recruit points, add those totals together, and whoever has the highest total of those points gains the mastermind card. Then, to complete this mode, players will add up the victory points found in the red circles of the mastermind, villain, henchman, bystander, and mastermind cards. Whoever has the highest victory point total wins the individual victory. And as with any game of this nature, be sure you're reading the cards as they come out so you don't miss a thing. And that's all you need to get started playing Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. For an idea of how it feels to play the game, join me next time as I do a playthrough.